Welcome to Little Known History, where the past isn't just remembered, it's revived. Now let's talk about ancient Egypt. No, not the Hollywood version, not the museum mannequins. I'm talking about the people who actually lived, ruled, built, and died along the Nile thousands of years ago. For generations, scholars have argued over one burning question. Who were the Egyptians really? Were they Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, something else entirely, or were they fundamentally and undeniably black Africans? Well, buckle in, because DNA is talking, ancient art is staring us right in the face, and the historical record, it's begging to be heard. Today, we're going to connect the dots between science, self-portrayal, and culture, and maybe, just maybe, rewrite how the world sees one of its most legendary civilizations. Imagine this. Scientists have rediscovered the 4,000-year-old remains of an Egyptian man from the Old Kingdom era, when the pyramids were fresh off the blueprint, as well as two Libyan women buried not far from him. Their DNA, it tells a story that no textbook ever dared to fully write. Instead of showing ties to Europe or the so-called white Mediterranean, their genetic markers led up with connections to modern northeastern African populations. Think Nubians and the people of the Horn of Africa. That's not just a surprise. That's a game changer. Now, yes, there's a bit of Near Eastern admixture as well. After all, Egypt was literally the crossroads of Africa and Eurasia. But the dominant thread running through their lineage? African. Through and through. But DNA is only one piece. So what did the ancient Egyptians think they looked like? What would they see if they looked in the mirror? Now let's look at their art, because Egyptians left behind one of the most detailed and consistent records of their appearance in all of ancient history. What do we see? Brown skin, jet black skin, full lips, broad noses, coiled and kinky hair. Not in just one tomb, but everywhere. These weren't just random scribbles. Egyptian artists were intentional. When they wanted to show someone who was not Egyptian, like a Greek, a Jew, an Arab, or a Roman, they made it obvious. Thin lips, sharp noses, long silky hair. Clear distinctions. So here's the $1 million question. If Egyptians painted themselves so distinctly from their neighbors, why are we still confused about them today? Now let's zoom south to Nubia, their so-called sister civilization. You'll notice something fascinating. Egyptians and Nubians are depicted with almost identical features. They practiced similar burial rituals, worshipped similar gods, even wore each other's crowns. And during the 25th dynasty, Nubians didn't just influence Egypt, they ruled it. The black pharaohs weren't invaders, they were kin returning home. So, with all this, why has modern scholarship spent so long avoiding the obvious? Okay, quick breather. If you're enjoying this deep dive into truth-telling history, hit that subscribe button. It helps out a ton and encourages me to upload more of these stories. Anyway, there's this idea floating around that ancient Egyptian art is merely symbolic. Like none of it was meant to be realistic. But that just doesn't hold up. When you look at these tombs and temple walls, you're not just seeing deities and kings, you're seeing people as they saw themselves. And what stands out? A range of skin tones that can easily match what you'd see walking through modern-day Sudan, Ethiopia, or even southern Egypt itself. Full lips, broad noses, and tight, textured hair. Now compare that with how they drew their neighbors. Semites with fairer skin and narrower features, Greeks and Romans with straight hair and angular faces. The contrasts were not subtle, they were deliberate. In other words, the Egyptians didn't see themselves as colorblind. They knew exactly who they were and who they weren't. Even more fascinating, the Nubians are drawn right beside Egyptians, with the same features, the same posture, sometimes even the same clothes. These weren't depictions of foreigners, they were portraits of family. Yet still today, some scholars claim the Egyptians were non-African. If that's the case, why did they consistently portray themselves as black Africans? And it's not just visual. Let's talk about burial sites, religious symbols, and language influences across Egypt and Nubia. Their rituals match, their symbolism aligns, and their belief systems echo each other. This isn't just two separate cultures brushing shoulders. This is a shared legacy and a shared civilization carved into the bones of a continent. So, why the resistance? Why has this truth been swept under the rug for so long? You know why? Because for the last 2 centuries, much of Egyptology was filtered through a colonial lens. The idea that a black African civilization could be responsible for the pyramids, hieroglyphs, medicine, astronomy, and so much more, it just didn't fit the narrative European powers wanted to tell. So what happened? The Egyptians were reimagined, their features softened, their heritage relocated, and textbooks started whispering the idea that Egypt wasn't really African. Even when ancient Greek historians like Herodotus said, point blank, that Egyptians had dark skin and woolly hair, their testimonies got side-eyed or dismissed. But now, genetics is stepping up. The DNA of ancient remains confirms what the art and history have always shown. African ancestry was central, not incidental. This isn't about rewriting history, it's about restoring it. And as more people begin to embrace the African roots of ancient Egypt, it forces us to ask, what else has been erased? This isn't about rewriting history, it's about restoring it. And as more people begin to embrace the African roots of ancient Egypt, it forces us to ask, what else has been erased? Whose stories are still buried under layers of denial? So here's the truth, laid bare by DNA, art, and cultural memory. The ancient Egyptians were, in all meaningful ways, a black African people, rising from the heart of the Nile Valley. They weren't just a part of African history, they shaped it. They weren't an outlier, they were a pinnacle. And no amount of denial, distortion, or dusty old theories can erase that. The more we embrace this truth, the clearer the full picture of human civilization becomes. If you've made it to the end of the video, I would just like to thank you, especially to my subscribers, especially for the people who have helped my channel grow from 39 to 55 subscribers in just 1 week. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment something positive. This is Little Known History, signing out.